Almost finished. The scenery is finished. The only thing that's left to do is the last of the automation. And that's because it will be going out to the public. And because I don't want to employ kind of 10 or 12 operators, which is going to cost a lot of money, it was really important to make it work automatically. So the last of the sensors, which tell the computers where the trains are on the layout, they're just going as we speak. And yeah, within a month or so, everything should work automatically. Routes will work automatically, signals will change, trains will speed up, horns will sound, trains will slow down, etc., etc. So that's the idea behind it. Well, it's way beyond me technically. So fortunately, I've got two guys, Jonathan and Rob, who've come on board and really helped with the automation. They're both software engineers. So it employs Rockrail, which is a computer program, and also two hardware manufacturers, Digitrax, which most people will have heard of, and DigiKeys, which is a Dutch company. And it's kind of a hybrid setup that all works together. And it has been really difficult to make it work for the simple reason that O-gauge and the amount of locos on this layout, they draw so much power. It just requires that power to be continuous, but it just, basically there's no manufacturer that builds an automation system that works for O-gauge, so we've had to create one from scratch. So it's a hybrid system, but we're just about ironing the last of the bugs out now. Yeah, I always joke with Jonathan and Rob, what I want to do is come in and like one of those Dracula films where you have, you know, where you pull down that big thing and everything fizzles and cracks. You know, I wanted a big switch I could pull down and everything would start working. Kind of doesn't work like that, but it is quite easy. The whole system boots up on an operations desk around the corner. You simply click on the program, you click on the automation, and the computer will sense where all the trains are parked and then start sending them out according to the timescale and the timetable that's been programmed into them. Yes, you can. So you can have, there's four main railway tracks, four main lines, should I say, on Heaton Lodge. Each of the lines has its own fiddle yard. So basically you could have 3 fiddle yards and 3 tracks working automatically, and just for a bit of fun you can actually manually operate the fourth one. So you can either have it full automation, semi, or you can have it completely manual. Well, the next thing to do is quite a big step, and that's to dismantle it. And it's never been dismantled before. Obviously, I've built it, so I kind of can see how it's going to be dismantled. But it's going to be dismantled. It's going to be put in every section, and there's about 100 sections, each of which has its own handcart to carry it to the next destination where it's going to be taken to. It's going to be dismantled and each section put on its own handcart, and then we're going to push them around the basement down here a bit and then start rebuilding it back up again. And I'm just hoping when I pull that big switch that there's not going to be a big bang and a load of smoke. But I'm confident it should work all right. That is a good question and one everybody asks, but I think realistically 3 days, but I'm going to factor in 4 full days with 6 guys to help lift, put everything on the trestles. In fact, one of the hardest things that I've come to realise is lining everything up. So basically Heaton Lodge Junction is a huge rectangle. So you've got 2 sides of the rectangle, and the distance between those 2 sides must be the same for the whole 200 feet. Because if you're joining boards or sections together, and one of them is 2 mil out, and then the next one is 2 mil out, by the time you've got to the end, you're never going to get the curves at the end to join the 2 straight sections of the rectangle. And I messed around for ages with laser levels and laser lines to try and get these 2 sides of the rectangle exactly the same distance apart. And in the end, I just realised a piece of string. So one piece of string touching one side of the rectangle, the other piece of string touching the other side, and in theory, if you keep that piece of string tight or taut, and each end touching each side of the rectangle, you should be okay. But I'll let you know next month when I've done it. I've not counted. I think there's about 50 scenic sections, which are these big lumps. and then there's about 80 fiddle yard sections which are much narrower because obviously there's no scenery on. Say narrower, they're not as high. So 4 or 5 of those will go on one hand cart, whereas with the scenic sections they go on double-decker hand carts, which the kind of the top deck lifts off, and there's a gap between, so there's no damage to the trees or the gantries or whatever else. To be honest, I'd never really seen the importance of lighting in a model railway, and it was only when I got chatting to the likes of Paul Marshall Potter, other railway modellers, who kept banging on about how important lighting was, and especially with this going to lots of different places. Some are going to be department stores that have shut down, of which there's many, as we all know now, these days. The lighting is probably going to be pretty poor, so I had to have these lighting rigs made, and they're designed to be portable, and they just carry strip lights which you can plug in, and when they're all assembled, they light the whole of the scenic side. So I think it is important to get the lighting kind of bright, bright and light. The back scene is coming on. It's not finished yet. I'm just at the minute I'm probably going to just have some sky prints for the back scene, but eventually I do want some kind of 3D-ish back scene showing the real locations background. But there's a lot of work in that, and at the minute, I'd end up being an old man if I did everything I want to do now. So I think I've done enough for the time being, and I just want to, as I say, make that simple with the back scene and portable, so I can just assemble it quite quickly wherever the layout goes. It's a good question. Well, as I said earlier, it all goes onto approximately 45 hand carts, which have been specially made by a metal fabrication company, and they push onto the back of an articulated truck. You need 3 articulated trucks with double deckers inside, so not just an Arctic which is just one big open space like I'm sure there's some lorry drivers watching this, curtain siders or box section. They're no good. You need one with that's double floored, and then the carts roll onto the back, and then when they get to the destination, they simply roll off again. And that's in theory how it should work. I think about 4 tons. Yeah, so it won't go in the back of a Volvo. But it's about 4 tons altogether. And this is one thing that makes it really difficult, because I talked earlier about how you've got to get the 2 sides of the layout completely straight. If you get it wrong, when you've spent 2 days lining everything up and the curves don't fit, the only way you can make it fit is to start again, because you can't move 3 tons or 4 tons of layout. So you've just got to get it right first time. Particularly proud of, obviously, the size, because I always did this because I wanted to convey that feeling I had when I was a kid of seeing trains come from such a long distance away, and everybody knows you can only do that with a big layout. But I'd say the detail more than anything else, simply because I never, until I built this, thought I was particularly creative, but I really kind of got stuck into the creative side and I really enjoyed it. I can't say that scratch building 800 foot of concrete trunking out of plastic styrene was fun, because it wasn't, and it made me slowly go crazy, but at the end of the day it does look good because it's all individually laid, and it's things like that I'm glad I did, especially now I'm nearing the end. I'm really glad I did that instead of just buying off the shelf products. Actually, not as long as what people think. The first board I think I got in the back end of 2013, so it's actually taken 7 years from start to finish, but that's with me doing nearly all the work, but working flat out fast, and for the last 3 years full time, just down here banging on. So it's just been, I did, as I mentioned to you earlier, I did spend 18 months practicing the different scenic techniques, so I didn't have to experiment when the first boards were scenic. I knew exactly what I was doing, so I could hit the ground running. And that really made a difference because there was so much to do, but a lot of it was very repetitive. So once I got the technique right, I could just replicate it and replicate it. The one thing I wouldn't do differently is build in a gradient over the whole length of the layout, because on the real at the real location there's a gradient of 1 in 137, which always meant over the last 150 years that trains have really had to work hard to get up this bank. It's good fun watching trains struggle on the model, but actually building the gradient in was really expensive and caused all sorts of problems, in that one end of the layout is 30 centimetres higher, which is a scale 1 in 137 over 1.5 scale miles, than the other end. So that made all sorts of issues with long, heavy trains. And so now I wish I'd have just made it flat, because I don't think anybody appreciates it. You can hardly see it, but it just created a lot of problems and expense. Getting some money back. Seriously though, when I started this, it was a hobby. Well, it is a hobby anyway. I'm a railway modeller like everybody watching this, but I'm also a businessman and I needed to bring some money back in. So I am hoping that taking it to different destinations up and down the country, avoiding railway exhibitions, mainly because there just isn't the space or the time allowed to set it up and break it down. So it's going to be its own exhibition, and hopefully the general public as well as railway modellers will come and see it too. So there'll be lots of people paying £4 or £5 to come and see it. I hope. We'll see. Really, the family. I've always had a passion for getting new people into the hobby. We all know it's got a pretty tarnished image, and it's got better over recent years, but it's still not the best. It's not got the best image. I didn't tell my fiancée for the first 3 months that I met her what I was doing down here. She actually thought I was storing wine. It was only when she came down, she couldn't find any red wine, that she saw a huge model railway and I had to come clean. So, it's just a case of, I hope it brings in some money, and but we'll see. Yeah, it'll be going into its home city, which is Wakefield, West Yorkshire, into the middle of the city centre during the course of this December, subject to COVID and everything else. And then there'll be a proper itinerary put into place for all of next year. It will only be school holidays because I need to get it out when there's a lot of people around. But it will be over 2 or 3 weeks, and like most exhibitions, which are only over 2 or 3 days, I just kind of want to change that and make it more easier for the public to get to, and so just to make it more accessible is the word I'm looking for.